Hi guys, this is Tara from the Niles Library, and I've got some great book suggestions for you today. This is the first in a series of videos that I will be posting each week on some great books that are kind of under the radar, but I still think that you should read them. You maybe never have heard of them before, so you didn't know that you wanted to read them. So here we go. First one is called The Serpent King by Jeff Zentner. It is set in rural Tennessee, and it's a realistic fiction kind of coming-of-age story. It centers around three high school friends, Dill, Travis, and Lydia. And the synopsis of the book is that these three friends are living in rural Tennessee, and they are kind of outcasts in their society. And each of them has something very special about them. So Travis is interesting and a really fun character. He is really big into an online role-playing game, so much so that he carries around a staff. So his friends think that he's normal, but everybody else in this town thinks he's super weird. And then there's Lydia. She is semi-famous. She has a fashion blog, and she is bound and determined to get out of this little Tennessee town and live in New York City and become a famous fashion designer. Then we have Dill. He's kind of the main character out of the three, and he has an interesting backstory. His father is in prison for child pornography charges, and the town sees Dill as that kid with the dad who did the bad thing. So he has kind of this family reputation, and people just kind of stay away from him, and it's really awkward for him. So kind of an interesting thing about this book is it has a really surprise ending, and I was really riveted throughout reading this entire book. We did it for Teen Book Club a couple years ago, and all of the kids liked it. So if you're looking for a good coming-of-age story that is heartbreaking and funny and weird and strange and wonderful all at the same time, I highly recommend The Serpent King by Jeff Zentner. The next book I'd like to talk to you about today is Midnight at the Electric by Jody, Lynn Anderson. This is not at all what I thought it was going to be when I set out to read this. There are three characters in the story. Adri, she's 18 years old, and she lives in the year 2065. The polar ice caps have started to melt, and she has to move out of her hometown of Miami because it is slowly becoming underwater. And she was chosen to live on the Mars colony. So she has to go to live with a distant cousin in Kansas so she can do training for this Mars colony. The second character that you will hear about and hear from in the book is Catherine, and she lives during the time of the Dust Bowl at the home that Adri goes to visit. Adri actually finds Catherine's diary in the stairs, or in the floorboards of the home that she's living in. And then there's Lily. Lily lives in London, England during World War I. All the characters are connected together in a way that I didn't see coming. And all of these three women are very strong and powerful, but in very different ways. And they go through very different things. And throughout reading this whole thing, I was just riveted about learning about the Dust Bowl and the people who lived through it, thinking about Adri's life and what could happen if the polar ice caps melted, and then Lily living in World War II England. So if you kind of like sci-fi, historical fiction, strong women characters, kind of a mystery, because you're reading all of these stories and you're wondering how on earth they're connected together. It's a really great book, and I enjoyed it very much. Midnight at the Electric by Jody, Lynn Anderson. The next book is Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. It actually won the National Book Award, and this is realistic fiction, and it is told through the perspective of three different siblings. They're half-siblings who meet through Grace, who is the older of the siblings, oldest girl of the siblings, I should say. The book starts off with Grace. She's pregnant with a baby at 16, and she decides to give the baby up, just like she was given up for adoption 16 years before. And she is completely wrecked and ravaged by her decision to give up the baby because she loves her baby, who she calls Peach, so very much. And the father is non-existent. He's kind of a jerk, kind of one of those you want to reach through the book and shake a little bit. He leaves her alone, and she is ridiculed and bullied because of her pregnancy. And when she comes back, she's bullied even more. The kids tease her because she gave up the baby, and she has a lot of emotional issues. And she decides to seek out her mother, and through her birth mother, and through this she finds Maya, who is her 15-year-old half-sibling, who is loud and outgoing, and she feels out of place in the home that she was adopted into because she's a brunette living with a bunch of redheads. And then there's their brother Joachim. He is 18, and he has physical and mental scars from being pushed through the foster system. And he has a family now that he's 17 and turning 18 in the book. He has a foster family that wants to adopt him, but he's scared to death of having somebody love him because he knows what happens in the foster system. And there's so much going on. You know, the siblings talk about their own stories and their own troubles and things that they're going through, and they also talk about, you know, Grace really wants to find the mother, but the other two are kind of wishy-washy, and it's kind of their journey together as siblings and trying to find each other and trying to find out about their birth mother and why she gave them up. So this book has it all. It's got a lot of humor in it. It's got a lot of drama. You will cry and you will laugh. It's a very wonderful book, and I highly recommend Far From the Tree. The last one I'm going to talk about today is Dreamland Burning by Jennifer Latham. It's kind of a really great book to talk about the Tulsa race riots, which is something that not a lot of people know about when it comes to civil rights and that whole movement. So the book, kind of like Midnight at the Electric, takes place in two different time periods. The present day is Rowan. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the current time. She's biracial, and her parents are redoing their house, and they find a skeleton under the floorboards of a room in their home. And they know that the skeleton has not ended well. There is a gunshot wound in the head. The second character's will takes place in 1921, just days before the Tulsa race riots and leading up to the actual race riots. The father owns a Victrola shop, and if you're not sure what a Victrola is, it's a really old-fashioned record player. So it's about Rowan trying to find out who the skeleton is and trying to find herself as a biracial woman and trying to figure out where she fits in and her connection to the Tulsa race riots and how she feels about being a part of the history of Tulsa and learning about civil rights and equality for everyone. And the author really sets it up in a great way where the reader can learn something with the main character, Rowan. She has a best friend who is hilarious, and I thoroughly enjoyed him as a character. Another character I really enjoyed is the medical examiner that comes to Rowan's house to talk about the body. So if you kind of are interested in science and crime lab things, there's a little bit of that in this book. There's history, there's great lessons to learn about equality and the civil rights movement. And you can learn about the Tulsa race riots as well, which is something that is not talked about as much. So this is a great book. This is Dreamland Burning by Jennifer Latham. All 4 of these books are available at the Niles Library. You can call us to put the book on hold at 683-8545, extension 106 or 109. And if they are not available, we'll put them on hold for you. Then they will be yours as soon as they get checked back in. So if you're looking for something to read this summer, I highly suggest these 4 books. Thanks, friends. Bye.